who can't join us today. So we should have both of those going. So thank you. It's nice to see we have some guests today. I wasn't too sure how many we would have just due to spring break. And I know the spring conference was held the last couple of days. So I'm excited to see that we have some participants today. For those of you who are new, we have Asta Bowen, who out of Summers, and she's joining us today. My name is Crystal Smith. I'm the program manager for Transformational Learning in Montana Advanced Opportunities. Due to some conflicts, I've kind of switched what we were planning on learning this month with next month. So I know that the topic of this month is a highlight of districts around the state, but due again to some spring break and some conflicts and some people just not able to join us at the last minute for this session. We're going to look at kind of some re-imaging of schools, what that might look like, and hopefully you find this session thought-provoking. I just want to make a disclaimer to begin with that I am a huge proponent of public education. I served in the field for 10 years as a classroom teacher, was fortunate enough to have some great mentors and leaders who helped me learn about what is possible within the public education field. So as we work today and learn, I hope this is thought-provoking. I hope that this is these conversations are somewhat challenging and then maybe even make you a little unsettled as to where education is and where it could possibly be going. And then as I talked with Asta before, others joined us today, there's a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of new initiatives going on, both with these Transformational Learning and Montana Advanced Opportunity Grants. But as I've heard some rumors, the legislation is looking to create some more flexibilities and funding opportunities, as well as the OPI through some ESSER dollars. So just in the last couple of days, that's been brought to my attention. So I think that this is really a path of how do we innovate for students, how do we provide pathways for them, and really allow them to have the best personalized learning experience that they can have. So having said that, this map on the first slide is simply districts that were funded for fiscal year 23, or sorry, fiscal year 22. So a lot of districts, we've got K-12 elementary, high school elementary districts, and around the state of Montana from Class C schools all the way up to Class AA. So when we look at models around the state of Montana, we see that all these different districts are able to personalize and transform within their own means and ways that best fit them. So understanding that personalized learning and transformational learning is not just only works for a certain district or a certain group of kids, but it's truly revolutionary to be able to match the needs of all students. So the first thing we're going to do is I want you to draw your ideal school, whether it's on a scratch piece of paper or a notebook that you have in front of you. I want you to draw, might be a building, but an image of your ideal school. And as you do that, I want you to label your school with the most important attributes needed to make your school ideal for students. I've heard some pretty extraordinary people talk lately, and I think sometimes we lose this concept of school was created for students, right? So as we're teachers and leaders of school, I'm really trying to focus this idea of the purpose of school is truly to help students, not provide jobs for teachers. And I think sometimes within the day-to-day struggles and challenges, that sometimes some people might lose that focus. So today we're going to be focused all around this idea of how can we transform school and what are the best needs for our students, not us as adults. So I'll give you a few minutes to work on that drawing that you're creating. And if you feel comfortable turning on your camera and holding that up, just so we can kind of, as I like to say, walk the room and see what others might have on there. Mike, I see your comment. Yes. Alpern is not on there because it's not funded yet, but we're coming your way.
You weren't supposed to see my notes. That was me in my head. You were just supposed to see my wonderful drawing. Oh, oops, Freudian slip. I'm sorry.
I know. So we'll go about maybe 30 more seconds here, working on drawing your picture of an ideal school and including those attributes that would be included within a school if you could create your own school with your own rules and own design. And as we work today, hopefully you hear something or see something that you may wish to add to your drawing. So please feel free to do so, as this is your own reference and own ideas as we work to develop this concept and this mindset of a school of choice. And if you have your school drawing done, feel free to write down. You can put it in chat or you can put it on your notes. What is a professional goal that you have for yourself for today? Or if you want to unmute and share it out with the group, that's great as well.
It's good to meet you all. This is my first time to attend this group, but I am very excited to get started. We're moving forward. And with our plan as of last week, we had a big board decision to chase after our plans. And so I just attended the MASS conference, and they had Beth Troy there presenting from the University of Miami, I think, presenting on transformational learning in one of the sessions. And so actually my school building was sort of built. I stink at drawing, so mostly it's concepts and a concept map. But at the top of my goal list for this project is both for my design for how transformational learning is going to happen in the school, in my imagination, but also then in my presentation to the community. And my number one goal is preparing the space. And so a lot of my focus right now is just planning all of the disparate elements that are needed to form the basis for building this new program on it, preparing financial space, preparing the physical space, preparing the community space for acceptance of this project. And so to me, that's kind of where I'm at starting. And then from there, working down through strengths and creativity, then into collaboration, and then into diverse perception assessment and the readership of the community. And then trying to work down there to give us enough time and preparation of space to get some good results out of this first attempt, to either give us a really positive result that will propel us forward, or to provide us with some things that we definitely need to work on. But I would say at the top of my list of goals is just that preparing the space for this initial jump.
Thanks, Derek. I appreciate you talking about stakeholders, and Michael will talk about stakeholders as she presents a little bit later on. But when we try to change something that's been in place for 100+ years, a lot of people have ideas about what education should look like because it's something that we've all experienced. And so the voice and the perception of stakeholders is very important as we look to try to maybe go down a different path when it comes to public education. So Derek, I think that leads us right into this quote. So, or question, how might we develop the courage to make our educational practices more student-centered so that every student thrives and reaches their highest possible level of success? And in the books that I've read and the webinars that I've been a part of, every group that has spoken on this has talked about courageous leaders, right? So in my experiences, in my conversations with other educational leaders, that concept of being a courageous leader is vital for change. And I know that sometimes can be uncomfortable. Sometimes it's not what people want, and I totally understand that. But know that this work definitely takes courageous leaders. So I appreciate the leaders who are joining us today to look at this idea. When we talk about this concept of the highest possible level of success, the Montana Constitution states, that the people's goal is to develop the fullest educational potential of each student. So I want you to think about a student within your either classroom or school or community, and think about their educational experience, regardless of whatever age they are. And I want you to think about, how is your school going about developing their highest possible level of success? And then I want you to think about a different student, maybe a similar student, maybe a student completely different, and think about what is their highest possible level of success. So when you think about this task, when you think about the commitment to the Montana Constitution, when you think about this change in education, like the responsibility and this journey is exhausting, right? It's all encompassing. It's what some people might say is impossible to be able to provide this for all of the students that we that we serve, whether it be an elementary school in the Class C setting, or I see we have Matt Jensen here from the Flathead, so Flathead High, and these two high schools, and all of their supporting elementary schools. So my goal today is that I start to help you see that this is not impossible, and what are some ways that we can actually provide the highest possible level of success for every student in our school, in our community, regardless of their background. So the first slide that we really want to look into is, we hear it called student-centered, but I would think that everything we do in our school is student-centered, because again, schools are developed for students, not for adults. So I'm going to use this concept of student-driven, which can be used synonymously, but student-driven learning. So when we look at a solution tree model for student-centered or driven learning, they break it into 4 different parts. The first one being deeper thinking and learning, talking about schools moving away from an overwhelming emphasis on students mostly doing lower level thinking tasks. We know that in this day and age, the majority of our students come into our classrooms with a watch or a phone or an iPad or a device that any of those lower level thinking tasks and information, recall information, can be found with a few clicks of a button, right? So how do we change that concept to students more often engaging in tasks of greater cognitive complexity, creating, thinking critically, problem solving, effective communication and collaboration? A lot of times we hear those as 21st century skills, talking about, the 4 C's. So how do we learn, or how do we change education so we're no longer just taking multiple choice tests and moving on regardless of that outcome? The second piece that they talk about is authentic work, right? Moving from isolation, siloed academic work to environments that provide students more opportunities to engage with and collaborate with relevant local, national, international, interdisciplinary communities. We know this day and age that everyone has an opinion on everything, right? Including those first graders that come to our classroom, or those juniors and seniors who have been in our school district for now 10 and 11 years. So allowing students to use their interests, use what their passions are, using their opinions to truly allow them to decide what type of work is authentic to them, I think is vital. And a lot of times we think of that goes hand in hand with project-based learning, right? What are you interested in? What opinions do you have, and how can you support those and back those up, and then present those to folks who maybe have differing opinions than you. Another concept that Solution Tree uses when we talk about student-driven learning is student agency and personalization. Moving from classrooms that are overwhelmingly teacher-controlled to environments where students are able to decide what they want to learn, how, when, where, with who, and why they want to learn. So I think a lot about my 2.5-year-old. And when I tell her what she's going to do, or I tell her how she's going to play or who she's going to play with, I get a much different outcome than when I say, Harper, what would you like to do today? Harper, what are you interested in playing? Harper, what would you like to eat today? Or when would you like to eat? So the more ways that we can provide student agency and personalization within their learning, I feel the more buy-in that we get from our stakeholders, especially our students. Think about us as adults, right? And some of us have experienced leadership that micromanages, right? And tells us what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, versus allowing us to use our professionalism and creativity and collaboration to do our best job, and the different outcomes that we receive based on those 2 different types of leadership. And then finally, technology infusion, whether we like it or not, technology is changing daily and really driving the world around us. So moving from local classrooms that use, largely based with pens and pencils, notebooks, to being able to reach out globally to connect to learning spaces. I remember a quote that just sticks in my mind from one of my prior principals. At this point, we were a one-to-one school district where every student had a Chromebook that was issued to them that they brought to and from school every day. And she asked our staff, are Chromebooks an expensive replacement for paper and pencil? And at the time, I had no idea what she was talking about, because I was like, yeah, they're cool. Kids are excited about them. Kids like to be on them. We can research, so we don't have to go down to the library and check out books. But what she was truly trying to get at looking back is, how are you personalizing and transforming education with the technology that you have available to your students? That is more so than just that paper and pencil replacement, or using the technology to find factual information that's very lower level thinking. So we'll look at some of those models here moving forward. The article link here, we're not going to open it, but there's a link to some more of this information from Solution Tree that also has a questionnaire, a personalized questionnaire that allows you to see where your district or where you personally might be along this continuum of trying to create student-driven learning. So moving forward, student-driven learning ties directly to these essential skills. I want you to think about where you are professionally right now, and how did your elementary, high school, post-secondary, maybe master's programs help you get where you are today? And what content did you learn in those that you truly use on a day-to-day basis in your life? I know I never had any ambitions of working for the State Department and teaching adults. I wanted to teach students. I love being a classroom teacher, and life changes and opportunities drove me down a different path. So when I think about my elementary education bachelor's degree from the University of Montana, I'm not sure how many of those courses that I took really prepared me for what I'm doing today. However, I believe that there are essential skills that I was able to develop that has provided me with the opportunity to have the occupation that I do have today. So thinking about that, I think it's important for us to think about, what skills do students need to be successful students, learners, and workers? So in the chat, if you would, feel free to add 1, add 15, whatever you think. What are these essential skills that students need to have to be successful students, learners, and workers? You see curiosity, problem solvers, teamwork, initiative, perseverance, communication skills, social skills and communication. Thanks, Dan. Micah says empathy, problem finding skills, inspiring others, seek and experience joy, lifelong learning, a feeling of purpose, confidence. Great. Grit, curiosity, hope. Thanks, Matt. So when we look at an article provided by Rasmussen University in 2019, here are the 7 essential skills that they came up with: communication, time management, critical thinking and problem solving, teamwork. We saw that emotional intelligence, being able to understand other people's feelings, and how do we work to with the mindset or the concept of supporting others' feelings and our own. Digital literacy, initiative, which we saw some of those. So according to a 2021 Forbes article, when they listed the 12 qualities employers look for when they hire, you can add to this list knowing their strengths. How important that is for employers and students to know what they're good at. Thinking independently. We talk so much about this idea of being able to collaborate and communicate, but also the concept of thinking independently and having a stance or an opinion and being able to support that. They talk about goal-oriented and being responsible. So when we look at these essential skills that carry us in any avenue of our life, the question I think arises, why is so much focus based on content instead of competency? And that's kind of where we're going to head next here. If I can get my clicker to work. So in order to do this, I think it's important to ask students, what are you so good at that workers would want to hire you? I think it's also important for us to ask our teachers, how do you support students in developing these skills? If we know that they're important, is there a direct instruction or instructional opportunities that allow students to develop these skills within the safeness and security of classrooms? And then being able to ask our school districts, what personalized opportunities do you provide for students to demonstrate these skills? So an idea of this is a portrait of a graduate. I've had the great opportunity to work with Micah Clarkson out of Alberton School District through the University of Kentucky. And her district is working on providing a portrait of a graduate to help guide their staff and their students on developing these essential skills. So Micah, I'm going to turn it over to you. I will make you a co-host here in case there's anything that you want to share. And the floor is all yours. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Crystal, for having me. I should have gotten a hold of you earlier and asked specifically how much you would like me to talk, because anybody who's met me know I have no problem speaking, and I need to remind myself often to share the air. So, Crystal, are there specific things, or if there's anybody in the group wants to shout out what you might be interested in when it comes to the process of a portrait of the graduate? That way I can kind of lead what I talk about, or I can just jump right into it. But I was trying to get your input first.
Yeah, Mike, I think kind of just sharing the process, maybe your vision behind this, the why
Sure.
Of why your school is looking to go this route. And then as people have questions about either the process or your purpose or anything else, being able to put those in the chat box, and I'll help mediate that for you as you present.
Great. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So I'm going to start by saying the why. If you haven't seen Most Likely to Succeed, that really helps with determining maybe your own personal why, right? I think as educators right now, I know everybody around the nation is feeling this year is kind of bursting at the seams, and maybe I'm wrong and I shouldn't make the assumption that folks are feeling that where they are, but to my knowledge, school's tough right now. Kids are having a really tough time navigating the meaning of their education, right? They spent some time home in quarantine, and I don't know about you, but I often get students going, well, why do I even have to come to school? And if I find myself having a difficult time answering that, right? If I go, well, to get a job, right? Or to prepare you for the real world, that it doesn't help, right? We need to come into agreement with the community. And so our process in our school, somebody had said earlier, we want our community. I forget who was talking. I think it was you, Derek, about the community and their input. The word we really try to look for is that agreement, right? So we held monthly redesign meetings last year where we screened Most Likely to Succeed with the community, where we invited people to come and just talk about some of these thorough questions. We did some surveys with them, and we started with that, just optional meetings, right? Then this year we really dove in and we ended up doing a lot of empathy interviews. We only have about 140 students in my school, PK through 12. And so we did about 93 empathy interviews with a vast majority of our students, where we asked them very specific questions. And I'm happy to share what those questions were that led us to have a better understanding of what did they want? What did they see that was going really well? I know, Crystal, I know you plan on sharing some of those empathy interview questions too. So I'm going to skip through that. But then we also had meetings with teachers, right? We had these times and opportunities off campus, off school grounds, where we met with teachers and we had these deep conversations, right? Trying to come to consensus as to what are the skills we really want students to take on. So from that, we got to go back and categorize these different skills. We have a draft and put it to an image that's meaningful and purposeful. So that way, when you ask a teacher or ask a student, what are some of the competencies they'll be working on? We call them durable skills on our portrait of the graduate. And we actually call our portrait of the graduate a 25-year-old graduate for that matter. I'll go back to that in a second. But we want them to be able to say those things in a concise way. So we'll stick it to about 5 categorical ideas, kind of the ones I threw out there, but we're still being sure everybody is on the same page. We have one more community meeting where we'll purposefully send invites out to different business owners, people that often end up employing graduates of Alberton and bringing them in, and alumni, and trying to get under one roof. And again, looking at our draft of a portrait of the graduate, coming to that agreement. So we feel really strongly about it, because the next steps will be that competency or mastery based or proficiency based grading that you all know you had to define in order to get your transformational learning grants. Now we need to be able to put that on paper. Boise, Idaho has a really good one out of One Stone, where they have a mastery based report card or growth model report card. And they have gotten their students to come successfully into the University of Montana and to Montana State University. So we know it's possible, right? If other schools are able to get rid of these traditional transcripts that have compliancy grades, right? Whether a kid was able to complete with adequacy, right? Or accuracy, I should say, on their assignments, that we need to change that. I could go on forever. I'm going to stop and I'm going to say, what do you all want me to potentially dive deeper in or give you a little bit more insight to? The school's called One Stone, John, and it's pretty amazing. There's a documentary about it called Rise that will go over it. If you look up their website, just onestone.org, I think it'll speak better than I can for them. Pretty amazing. 2/3 of their school board are students. Their governing board. Oh, fantastic. To have school, John, do you mean to have students on the school board? Yes, I imagine.
One sec, sorry.
You're fine.
One video, come on. There we go. Actually, both. I think it'd be fabulous to have students on the school board.
Yeah.
But our high school has been looking at it. We piloted in our English, high school English class this year, some standards-based grading, and we have K-4 already, 5 and 6, I think, too. And I think Allison and Christina that are on this can kind of support me, making sure I got that correct. So we're looking at it for more 7 through 12. We started piloting, but we want other examples. We know Big Sky is a local one that has been working towards getting standards-based grading at the high school level. And we'd like other examples. So this One Stone looks interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. I would say, as a group of us, if OPI is giving us these tools in order to be more successful at offering a deeper kind of learning, I would, while Crystal's here, I'd say, hey, can we have a summer institute where we sit together and have a statewide one, right? At least in standards. I think competencies should be reflected more on a community level, because Portrait of the Graduate is a very unique experience. What might work for one district shouldn't be necessarily the same for all of them, but standards-based grading across the state could be. And if we got together as a group and said we'd like this option so that it reads well and it goes on Infinite Campus, and that way I don't know about you guys, we have transient students, right, that go hopping from school to school and then come back to us. We want to be sure that we can all support each other, right, when a student leaves one district to the next, regardless of where they were.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Thanks, Micah, for putting me on the hot seat here. As you and I have talked about, I'm the very bottom of the totem pole.
It's okay. It's okay.
But on my list of to-dos, I'm headed around the state of Montana to meet with funded districts. And a lot of districts have talked about either their work towards standards-based. So I think you're spot on when you say that we need to have a common language, a common framework, and then that common time to sit together and say, how does this look in your district, John? How does this look in your district, Derek? What can we do to use the growing pains that you've gone through to help speed this up within our districts and make it, maybe statewide. We have state standards, so it shouldn't be that difficult. So I will
Right,
add
instead of
that.
all of us reinventing the same wheel, right? Because how many teams of teachers are we paying to put these together with us when we all know that the teachers don't have time right now? It's exhausting right now. And maybe I'm saying that too much. I guess I'm looking for other administrators and teachers to be like, yep, I get you, girl, because it's hard. And I don't see how we can put another thing on a plate that is then happening across the state in different times in different places when it's a tool that we could provide as a team.
Right. And I know I'm going to just give a little shout out to Mike. I know she last summer put together a weekend retreat where these ideas and initiatives were addressed. And I think she's trying to do the same for this summer. So I'm sure she'll be sending that out, and I'll share that with the community here as well. But you know, a nice retreat up there in the Alberton area over the summer with the Clark Fork running by, where we can talk about standards based grading and what that competency is and what that looks like. I'm in for it, and hopefully we'll have some other folks here who are as well. So Mike, I'll turn it back over to you here for a few more minutes if we have people interested in asking some questions.
Derek, I saw your question there where you said that presentation. I haven't. Is it something that's recorded, or the ability to navigate to that?
I heard it at the last monthly mass meeting that I attended, and Dr. Seifert from MSU said that the state is pouring in a significant amount of money into looking into this. And as part of that money, MSU is offering free graduate credits to explore standards-based learning and applying them in the state. So I know that one of the superintendents at the meeting was from Minnesota and had been through a similarly funded project, and they had met with a lot of backlash from the communities and had eventually kind of spent all that money on looking into it, and eventually went back to traditional report cards. And so he was cautious about this whole idea. But as I'm looking around some of our rural communities, I'm seeing a lot more people that are interested in the career and technical education aspect of that. And one of the things that's very, I guess, very easy to relate to for a lot of our fabrication manufacturing workers around here is just the idea that you have a list of skills that you need to be able to do to perform a job. And so I felt like it wouldn't be that hard to equate standards and just your general job expectations that you might find at most CTE based jobs. And so I'm feeling cautiously optimistic about the whole thing. But there are, I think it's 6 graduate credits available that MSU is offering for free for people to be a part of that discussion and a part of that work.
Thanks for sharing that resource. I think, again, on a state level, right, if we move in this direction, what's important, especially because, again, we know how many states in the world of education are having a lot of interesting pushback, bills of transparency that are really trying on the educational society, and they're going to lose all their public ed teachers, I tell you what, with those kind of requirements that they have. And so I would say, speaking to what Derek said, is the importance of being sure our community sees the transparency and sees the purpose and has an opportunity to hear conversations as they're made. So it's not just us meeting in the summer and going, voila, here's some standards-based grading that we're going to miraculously slap onto every high school in our state, you know, and being sure that those opportunities are there. And you might have to, just like schools do in order to engage families, we might have to find ways to feed them and incentivize those kind of meetings, you know, or you do a micro school, which is, again, kind of what the direction Alberton is really considering for our middle school age kids. But again, that's a different conversation. I don't want to take too much. I want to share the air, and I'm going to throw it back at you, Crystal, but I'm going to put my email into the chat box. I would highly recommend. I love connecting with people. I just got to meet Matt and his team. Was that just last week? And and I would love to continue that networking that we have. I'm also going to put an invite into our What School Could Be Big Sky Changed community, which I plan to make a little bit more active. And that way we can have these conversations more often. Nice meeting you all.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate your time and your expertise.
Crystal, before you move on, can I ask a question about the OPI direction?
Yes, Matt, hopefully I can answer it.
So I've been fortunate to be a part of this work now at 2 different districts, and I think the standards-based grading conversation is a really good one. And it's layered, right, and understanding competencies and skills and guiding documents, and there's a lot of curricular work that needs to go in before you even have a conversation about standards-based grading. You need to identify what you're teaching. But anyway, that's a really good conversation and helpful. I think the layer above that is back to that conversation about a portrait of a graduate. And I know some states have, at the state level, identified a portrait of a graduate. And that has guided a lot of conversation in other communities within the state to kind of follow the same type of model. It would be helpful, in my opinion, if our OPI was to develop a portrait of a graduate at the state level, similar to what other states have done, that could serve as an example, but also provide some cover for the local districts that are embarking on that work. And then, there's other examples that states have done where they've regionalized conversations around those big topics, but it's just one more layer that I think exposes a lot of people in the state to, what we're trying to do when we talk about transformational learning. That biggest umbrella is really from your guys' office. So if it's not something you've considered, I'd really encourage you to consider that.
Yeah, thanks for that, Matt. I know in preparation for some webinars that I've had conversations with the Deputy Superintendent Allen about that. And she had mentioned that and this was probably about a month ago, but at that time and place, that it was not a focus of Superintendent Arnson to work on a portrait of a graduate, to have that commonality with amongst our state. But that doesn't mean, within the rest of this term that isn't somewhere where she might lead. So I, by no means am speaking on her behalf, but I will definitely share that concern and that suggestion from you. I know when we think of portraits of our graduates, we think of the state of Virginia that, like you said, is a statewide umbrella, right? So they have that support, they have that safety net, and that security that this is what all schools are doing within their state, so that people are not able to pinpoint and point out those schools that are trying to be an agent for change. And then I've been working a lot hand in hand with Idaho and my counterpart on their state department. And Coeur d'Alene School District actually tried to implement Portrait of a Graduate, I want to say 2018, 19, 20, and it pretty much got shut down by, I'm quoting some radical thinkers and agencies, because again, it was that isolation, that one district trying to create massive change. And so Matt, if I'm hearing you correctly, being able to have some sustainability within numbers and that unification is powerful and valuable. And so I appreciate you bringing that up, and I will definitely share that again with Deputy Allen and see what direction that might be able to take us. And I will get back to you on that. And I see Micah has her hand raised.
Yeah, I love that to a degree. I think Virginia, if I'm wrong, correct me, has the requirement that every school develop one, but not the same one. Because again, I think it's a very intimate process, right? What each district determines to be, because then that's that buy-in and that sense of belongingness, and it's that agreement and that fulfilling of advocacy and giving choice and that voice and choice ability. So I think Virginia actually requires that each district implement one, but I don't think they have a specific one each district should implement. So I would be a proponent saying, yeah, OPI, go ahead and make it a requirement, give us the resources to fulfill those requirements, and let us go on it and give us examples and exactly what you're saying, Matt, maybe specific training, but allow some more local control over it.
Yeah, the one we're thinking the exact same thing, Micah. The one that I'm thinking of as the mental model actually comes from South Carolina, and they do the kind of this umbrella from the state of these are the categories that we're looking for each school to be considerate of when you're engaging your community, and then from there each community determines, you know, the scope of each one of those bigger topics to consider. But I think the bigger idea is that we're all doing very similar work across the state, and there seems to be more and more really positive energy to this work. And these could be quick, easy ways to unite around very common threads and then get as specific as we want, with the understanding that this is not a political, you know, conservative or liberal idea. This is just, how do we better serve the students in our communities idea.
Yeah, thank you for that, Matt. Couldn't agree with you more. So we will, I'll be the messenger and see what we can get accomplished. Thanks for bringing that up. So we have about 12 minutes left. I'm going to provide this article for you. There's a link to it, but this might be the beginning point of next month's conversation. So not to send you off with any extra work, but this article, in my perception, is a must read. We got this from our What School Could Be community, an article by Will Richardson, who writes a lot of educational, transformational articles, but this one about the elephant in the room, and why is it so important for us to transform and change the way that we're providing educational learning opportunities for students. So I'm going to save this. We will spend some time looking at it next month, but if you are so inclined and wish to take a look at it between now and then, please go ahead and do so. Because I want to provide Jessica with some time to share what Belgrade's doing, I'm also going to skip this empathy interview piece. Excuse me, Micah briefly touched on it. We conducted these empathy interviews in her school district. But if we want change and if we want to know what's best for students, let's ask them, right? Let's take the time to ask them and see what are their opinions on school? What are their opinions on how we are using and valuing the time that they bring and share in our school districts every day. So we might go over this process also next month, but being able to gather this data from students' stories and feelings, and then using that data to create change. I think when we talk to parents and other stakeholders outside of our school, and even our own teachers who might be reluctant to change their professional practices, being able to share what students feel and experience as far as schooling is maybe one of the biggest drivers and catalysts for change. So there's also an article here linked here about empathy interviews if you wish to learn more about that. As I opened up today, we were going to talk about transformational ideas around the state. I'm going to have some more presenters for next month, but I still wanted to be able to share and provide some of those. So I know there are districts on here who've been funded for 3 years with the Transformational Learning Grant. I know there's districts that have been waiting for what feels like probably 3 years to be funded, and districts that are newly applying and just being able to receive some funding. So transformative ideas do not have to be reshaping your educational practices in your AA school starting tomorrow, right? There are bits and pieces that we can choose from that you might even be implemented in a classroom level. It might be a school level. And obviously, I think our whole drive for this change is at a district level and a state level, as Matt brought up. But here are just some opportunities and ideas of how can you initiate change, whether your district's funded for transformational learning now or still waiting. I want to talk about the 6th one down where it talks about pre-assessments. if your district applied for transformational learning, you had to provide a definition of proficiency that does not require seat time. So in some conversations that I've had with superintendents around the state, you might have students that at the beginning of a semester course can pass a pre-assessment and move on and earn credit for that course without even taking that course. That would be one idea of using a pre-assessment to measure current knowledge and being able to promote students from course to course based on using their prior knowledge and providing that flexibility instead of students sitting through a semester or a year-long course, already being able to demonstrate proficiency or mastery within the skills that are being taught. I also just want to briefly jump down to the last one, student employment. I was able to present to the Ed Interim Committee a couple of weeks ago, and we had a panel of funded districts, and a couple different new concepts that came about were Lockwood, K-12 district out of Billings. They are actually using students who've been CNA certified to be hired as parapros within their district because they cannot find enough parapros to support the needs of their special education and students with some additional medical needs. And so they're able to provide flexibility within the class schedule or schedules of a student or students to be able to have them complete their core classes that they still need to take or want to take, but then also hiring them as employees within their school district to serve the needs that their school districts have and can't fill. So I know I've talked a lot about in prior webinars being able to go out into the community, but now we're seeing students being able to serve the needs within our own school district. Heather Hoyer and her assistant principal out of Great Falls Public Schools talked about being able, they have seen a huge dropout rate when it comes to not only juniors and seniors, but even freshmen and sophomores, especially with the pandemic that we know that has changed changed everything, right? Everyday experiences have been changed. So what they're able to do is use their definition of proficiency and their model of mastery-based learning to provide freshmen and sophomore students with the opportunity to work in the afternoon and come and take their core classes in the morning. And then using those skills and competencies that they're developing out in the workforce to be able to earn elective credit within their graduation requirements. So again, really trying to be innovative, to have this concept of how can we create the best pathway for every student within our school district, whether they're headed to college or whether they're going into trades or whether they're a dropout student who we really need to protect and wrap our arms around and provide schooling that's relevant and important to them. So we will highlight some more of these different ideas next month's webinar, but just there are some transformational ideas there for you from around the state, as well as an assessment tool that's linked here. If you want to focus on the second category within that assessment tool, really talks about the instructional piece within our schools. So Jessica, I promise I'll give you about 3 minutes, but I just want to talk next steps. We've talked about stakeholders, creating a vision for your students in school, developing an action plan, which I know a lot of districts are currently working on or already have done, providing professional development, as I talked earlier about what legislators are working on and what the OPI with ESSER dollars are working on. We're really trying to create, how can districts partner with national educational thought leaders to be able to provide this professional development within their schools. So even after funding goes away, whether it's transformational learning dollars or legislative dollars or ESSER funds, that this can be self-sustaining, right? And I think the big thought behind that is being able to provide professional development for our teachers within our schools at that national level. Being persistent and flexible, I talked about being courageous. It's not easy work that you're all embarking on. So knowing that if you're trying to change something that's been around for 100 years, it's not going to change overnight. So keep fighting the good fight and being able to be flexible, and then apply for the Transformational Learning Grant if you had not. And I'm not going to talk about that grant today at the application piece of it, but I'll hit it hard again here this summer. So Jessica, I know I have not left you much time, but if you are still so willing to provide with us just a little glimpse of what's happening in Belgrade, we would love to hear from you.
Thank you, Crystal. You left me just the perfect amount of time, actually. So first of all, good morning, everyone. I came on in this role just this year, and I hate to admit this, but I was over my head and knew nothing about what I was doing. And Crystal was an amazing resource for me. I asked her a ton of questions, and she did a great job helping me out with all of that. So when we started, was our second year of funding. We had not spent a lot of money before this. So the first thing we did was we created some kind, I don't even know what to call it, like a request form for staff to fill out. And I gave those to administrators, and then we put our school goal and the district goal on this, and we gave it to teachers and let them request funds for transformational learning. We got a ton of requests, some of which did not fit into what our goals were, but a lot of really good requests. And so some of the things that I just wanted to share that we got this year, some collaborative seating. A lot of our classrooms are set up as what classrooms have looked like in the last 30 years. And so some collaborative seating was something that we really wanted to do to transform our schools. Our science department got a digital star lab, which we're really excited about, changing some of how we are teaching science in those classrooms. And then we also, and we talked about technology earlier, some of our science departments have a physical science and digital lab. We do not have a lot of technology in our area, or some of it is outdated. So we have really pushed the technology piece. I don't really have a lot more to add. I mean, I can tell you about a lot of the other things we've purchased, but I do think we are moving in the right direction now.
Yeah, Jessica, thanks for sharing. I think the technology piece is huge, right? Like I said earlier, it's not going away, right? It's only becoming more elaborate, more fast moving, more in front of our face. And we've got students who come to our schools who that's all they've known, right? I've got a 2.5-year-old who, whether I like to admit it or not, knows how to run an iPad because we use it together and she learns from it. So can only imagine when she's 10 years old and in school that may not provide those same levels of connectivity for her and interest and investment that she's experiencing at 2 years old. So Jessica, I thank you for your time. A lot more to share, but Belgrade funded for both transformational learning and advanced opportunities. And so we'll hear from them again, hopefully here in the next couple of months, but I appreciate you just sharing that tidbit of information as to what you are doing. Similar to Belgrade, I know Evergreen School District has used that similar model of providing transformative applications for their teachers to say, what do you want to transform? How do you want to transform it? Apply for funds. We'll support you with the funds from our transformational learning grant. So another use of being able to provide voice and choice for the teachers in the classroom who are being asked to change what they know and how they present and provide learning opportunities for students. So as I shared last month, I want to provide you with some resources every month based on what you want to learn and what interests you. So here's a superintendent's guide for Portrait of a Graduate, if this conversation struck of any accord with you and interest. The Hunt Institute provides monthly webinars nationwide from some very high-level thought leaders and folks within different state departments and others going through the same journey right now. So Hunt Institute is a great resource. I'm glad Micah gave a shout out to the Big Sky Change cohort there out of What School Can Be community. So I've linked the What School Could Be website. I know Micah is the co-host of the Minnewaha group as well. So two different collaborative online digital learning communities. If this conversation is something that you want to pursue. And then also for those of you who are podcasters, the Modern Learners podcast often offer some interesting viewpoints and very exact examples of how to change. So I'm going to thank our presenters, Jessica and Micah. Thank you so much. A pleasant surprise to see so many on here, sharing thoughts and just really striving and working to see how we can change and be better for our students. Thank you for the work that you are doing. I will be in the Flathead Valley Evergreen Elementary on March 31st from 9 to noon to host or to have some of these in-person conversations if you can make the Evergreen one. Next month, we have another Transformational Learning webinar. And here's the thought that I'm going to leave you with, which just really, really, I think hits home. We asked 18-year-olds to make huge decisions about their career and financial future, when a month ago we asked, they had to ask to go to the bathroom. And sorry, I butchered that, but I think that's the agent for change right there, right? How are we expecting students to do more and more once they leave our walls if we're not providing them more and more opportunities for flexibility and their own choice and voice and agency within our school districts? So I will hang on here if there are questions or people want to chat afterwards. But again, thank you for participating. Thank you for sharing. Hopefully we were able to at least get to the tip of the iceberg as some of your professional goal. And hopefully you were able to add one or two more thoughts to your ideal and perfect school. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Crystal. Have a great day, everybody. These guys might be thinking what I was thinking. I'm sticking around to try to pick at your brain.
Crystal, it's Oust. I just wanted to thank you for letting me sit in. It was really interesting.
Asa, I'm glad you joined us. Can you
Thank
just
you.
tell me, how did you find out about it, being a retired teacher?
It was in the newspaper.
Oh,
Yeah.
all
it was-
right.
There was a big article in the Daily Interlake a week or two ago, something like that.
Okay.
And it's just always been an interest of mine. So
Well, awesome. Well, we next month is scheduled for April 27th.
okay. great.
Same time.
Yeah, I may try to sit in again. Maybe I'll have my video working by then.
Okay, wonderful. Hope to see you
All right.
next month. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Mhm.
And then I don't even know if Cindy's there. She might have had to go.
Yeah, she might be.
Did you see I shared a huge spreadsheet with you of mass chaos?
No?
Okay, if you go to your email, I
Okay.
called it